pull this in a little bit. Okay. So yeah, in this demo, I'm going to show you how to rig a prop and have the character have that prop follow the character. So this character needs a megaphone. So I'm going to say File, Open Scene. Right? Yeah. I'm sorry, not Open Scene. I'm going to say Import, because if we say Open Scene, that's just going to open up a new scene. So I created one called mphone, which stands for megaphone, and I'm going to say Import. So here's our giant megaphone that we created earlier, and it's the wrong scale and it's in the wrong position. So I'm going to scale it down to his size first. Let's see, put a front view and scale it some more. Kind of drag it over here to the side for now. Actually, I'm going to put it right up to his mouth and see how big it needs to be to feel like it's actually the right size megaphone for this pawn. Maybe scale it a little bit more. That's pretty good. So with that scale, let's see, front view. So in the perspective view, yeah, that looks about right. I'm going to freeze these transformations. And what you want to do is decide, maybe before you freeze these transformations, where you want your default position to be. If you want the default pose for the megaphone to always be in front of him, then that would be your default pose. Or if you want him to just walk around with it and every once in a while use it, you would have it more on his side. But before we do that, like if I'm going to move it to his side, I need to change the center pivot of this object. So right now the center pivot is not even in the center. Now it's in the center. But I don't really want it to rotate from right here. I want to rotate it more from the handle, because if he had a hand, that's where the handle, that's where we would be rotating it from. So I'm going to position this as if he had a hand. I'm going to hold down W, and then I'm sorry, I tap on W, so I'm in the move tool. I hold down D as in dog and drag it more to where the middle of the handle would be. So just imagine his fingers are wrapped around this thing, and that's where you want the center pivot to be. So now if I rotate it, that's going to be better. The other thing is, like I said earlier, I don't want this always in his face. I want it on his side. So with the center pivot changed, I'm actually going to rotate this, let's say, I don't know, 80 degrees. And I'm going to position it lower by his side. I'll go back to the front view, and you can see I don't want it right in front of his body. I want it to be on the side. So if he was just walking around with this at a protest or something, he's going to be swinging it by his side. And then so the whole idea of creating a control handle is to have it move up in front of his face pretty easily, pretty efficiently. So maybe that's his position. And this may not be perfectly accurate, but that's a better default position for this megaphone. And again, if this is my default position, then I want to freeze transformations. And I'm going to go over to I have the graph editor open. I'm sorry, not the graph editor, the hypergraph. So panels, layouts, 2 panes side by side, panels, hypergraph panel, hypergraph hierarchy. So with these, with this megaphone in position, I'm going to go to edit. I'm not edit, create, and then NURBS primitive and create a circle. And this is going to be my control handle for my megaphone. So it's way too big. You can see I'm going to scale it and move it. In fact, I want it to be pretty much in the position where my megaphone is going to rotate from. So I'm rotating this up. I'll check again in the front view, and maybe I'll rotate it. So I want it to be parallel to this megaphone, and yours may not have to be parallel. I'm just trying to get this So it feels more like a natural rotation for me. And if you wanted to change the shape, you can do that. Maybe so you don't confuse it with some of the other control handles of the body. But I'm just gonna say that that's pretty close. And then I'm going to change the center pivot for this this circle. So first of all, I need to name it, and I'm going to delete this M-Phone1 stuff, and I'm going to call it Control C. I'm going to paste it here, Control V, and I'm going to call it, what should I call it? You guys remember from building the rig? Underscore what? If this is a control handle, oops, that's not what I wanted. Capital C-O-N for con.
My brain was thinking layer.
Layer?
Yeah, that I was like, it's just I've been doing layers for so
long. Oh, L-Y-R,
like,
yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, and layer, but then you went con. I was like, oh.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, it needs a layer called LYR, but that's for the layers editor. So here's my control handle. This also needs to freeze. We have to freeze this transformation. Modify freeze transformation, because this is what we need to have as default 0. Now this gets to be a little bit tricky. I could just leave it right where it is. So just as an example, I'm gonna parent my object to my rig, and you can see that I can rotate it from here up, and I can move it forward and drag it up and then pull it over to his face. And if I go to the front view, I can see that that's not, I need to rotate it more. So maybe that's better. So how many steps did I take to get it there? I had to drag it in the Z, drag it up in the Y, drag it over in the X. So that's 3 positions, or three movements, and then I had to rotate it a few times. So like 7 or 8 positions before I got it right. And I can see it's not right because it's in the front of his, it's like clipping through his face. So maybe once I got it in the right position, I can animate it there. But you want to create a rig that's thinking rotations as simply as possible. So instead of having to do, and you can see I use translate XYZ, rotate XYZ to get it to where I wanted it. What would be better, and so you want to think as easy as possible for the animator. How can I make this rig as easy as possible so it gets to where the animator needs it in maybe just one movement? So first I'm going to change the center pivot of this control handle to the center axis. So I hold down D and X at the same time, and I snap it to the middle. And where it gets tricky is trying to find where along the body is the right position to rotate it from. So I'm just going to hold down D this time, and I'm not going to snap it. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, and just, it's going to be hit and miss. So I'm going to try it from here. If I hit E and I rotate up and then rotate over, that's closer. There's only 2 positions, and you can see it's a little bit better, but my rotation isn't right. It's, I would still have to pull it over this way and then rotate it a little bit this way. So I think I can get a better position for my pivot than where I have it right now. Maybe I should go back to the front view. Maybe if I rotated the this guy, actually the megaphone, a little bit more, and then I'll freeze its, now that I've adjusted it, I'm going to freeze its transformation, and I'll test it here. Go up and over, and that's pretty good. If I look at it, that's a lot better. So maybe if I do that just a little bit more from view, I'm going to give it a little bit more rotation. Maybe I'll even pull it out a little bit more. And then freeze its transformation again, modify freeze transformation. Now with this center pivot, and this may change, you may decide to hold D and pull it up higher or lower, depending on what you need to do with it. Maybe you don't want to put this to his face. So just leaving it there, I'm going to test it here. Pull it up and over, and that's in 2 moves. I got it pretty darn close to where I needed it. So I'm just going to say that's good enough. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that where it is. So we've imported our prop. We've created a control handle for it. What have I forgotten? Can I just start animating from here?
You didn't make a group?
Very good. So if I, so I'll get to what I was about to show you, but yes, thank you. In order to keep this control handle clear of to keep all this stuff in its default positions or default values, we're going to need a group node, so that any translation or anything that happens to the group node will not affect the position of the values of the control handle. So here's my control. I just hit Control G for group, and I'll just take this name and copy it, Control C, paste it here. But what am I going to add to it? You guys remember? Con null, right? Also, just to remind you, if I select this megaphone con, you can see that it has some history on it. There's no blend shapes on this. There's no reason for me to keep this. So we want to keep these as clean as possible. So I go to Edit, Delete by Type, History. And the megaphone con null doesn't have any history. Let's see if the megaphone does. I don't think you can delete that. I think it's just its shape. Yeah. So that's good. So now we have this megaphone that, so here's another thing. Here's my center pivot up here. What about this con null? Was that going to work down here? So I'm going to turn off my pawn for a second. Let's see. And actually my rig as well. If I go to the front view, and I'm going to just click between these. In fact, this is close enough. I'm just going to cheat this. This is close enough to that grid line. I'm going to hold down D and X and just snap it to the grid. And then this guy, I'm also going to hold down D and X and snap it to the grid. Yours may not be there. It's easy for me to just snap it to the grid there. So we have our rig in order, but now we need to move our character. So we grab our control and the base control, and we move him. Let's say we want to move him to there. Do we want to animate this thing, always finding him? And we want this to follow him. So this rig, this miniature rig that we made for our prop, has to be parented into the bigger rig so that it follows it. And just like we parented these guys, we do the same thing. We're going to use this con null, and that's going to become a child, maybe of the head control, or maybe the neck control. It just depends. So we'll see what we want. So I'm going to select the child first, and then shift select the parent, which for now I'm going to try the neck, and I'm going to hit P, and yeah, everything's still in good shape. We haven't gained any values. And even if this null had gained values, that would be okay, because as long as these two do not have any values. All right, so if I move this at the root, at the base, you can see it follows now. And then, you can have him walk forward. Let's say he's at a protest, and he's going to raise his megaphone and start telling people they need to they need to exercise their right to vote or something. I don't know. Anyways, so yeah, it should be that simple, hopefully. But the biggest challenge should be, because we've already done all this, but the biggest challenge should be trying to find where the center pivot for this control handle would be most efficient for you, where in maybe just 2 moves you can get it in into the most useful position for your animation. And that's pretty much it. Let me go ahead and stop. Oh, before I stop it, does anyone have any questions?
I was gonna say, what if you don't know exactly where you want something for your animation yet?
Yeah, so that's where you're going to play with your rig. So let me, so we haven't done any animation to this, but I'm going to grab this character and I'm going to rotate him. And I don't know, maybe there's some really good music going on and he's dancing. Maybe he's going side to side. Do I want the megaphone to follow him that much? Maybe I need to put it lower. What happens if I drop this? Maybe it's not a parent of the neck con. Maybe it's the neck joint, I guess. Maybe it's a parent of the waist instead. Or I'm sorry, maybe its parent is the waist. So I'm going to select the child and shift select the waist. Where is it? It's way up here. Waist con, and hit P. So it shifted position. So now let's say if he's dancing up here with the top controls. Maybe it's not moving so much. So it's just it really comes down to how much influence you want it to have, depending on where you put it on the rig. Oh, I'm sorry, that I should have made it the chest, not the waist. If I put it way down here, so it's not going to move until his waist moves. So thinking about your story and how much movement you want, it's just going to be kind of trial and error until you find the right position that works best for you. And it may not be the perfect position, but the important thing is what's going to get you animating as quickly as possible. That's kind of what we're looking for. So one of the big concepts in rigging is you want to make things as easy as possible for the animator. So maybe there's even a better way where I could pose or rig this so that it just animates in one rotation instead of 2 rotations. So the fewer movements that the animators have to make to get a character into position, the faster they can animate. So that's really the mindset that riggers live in. And just to show you, let's see, this is those are the toe controls. So I have, here's the glasses con. So I could animate the head and I guess the afro and the glasses separate from the head itself. Maybe at some point, maybe this gets blown off his head or something, just depending on what you want to do with your animation. But again, you don't want to grab the geometry and move that off. You want to grab the control handle. Maybe I need 2 control handles, one for the hair, so I can get, a little bit of, some wind is blowing in his hair, and then a separate one for the glasses, so the glasses can blow off separately. Maybe the glasses blow off and his hair just kind of moves with the wind. So you just want to have enough control over your, build enough rigs to have the control that you need to get the animation you need. Maybe I don't need all that. Maybe my story doesn't have any wind and I don't even need to animate these. I just need these to follow the body. Then that's all I really need. As long as it follows the body, I'm telling my story. It really just comes down to how much you need to tell with your story. Anything else?
Can you move like the megaphone with different portions of the body? Like what if you wanted to drop the megaphone? Would you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. In my story, and this is a completely random story I'm just making up. This guy is a protester. Maybe this guy is back in the civil rights times, and he's at a protest or something. And I just imagine if he's walking around with a megaphone, in a march, he's going to want to pull it up every once in a while and hold it to his face and say something. But maybe at some point, maybe tear gas comes out and he drops the megaphone and he runs because he doesn't want to get the tear gas in his face. So I'm going to hold down D and X and snap it to well, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to snap it to the ground plane, and then I'm going to rotate it out. And, I may adjust this. Maybe the control handle needs to be lower so that when it hits the ground, it's not going to clip through the ground. Maybe I'll rotate it up a little bit. If I need it to hit the ground and stay on the ground, maybe I need a better center pivot. Maybe something closer to the actual pivot of the middle of the megaphone. So you can key and animate this megaphone by itself. Maybe someone else grabs it and takes it away, so it's no longer part of him. Another thing you can do, I mean, this is actually part of his rig, but you can have two megaphones, one that you turn off and one that you turn on, so that maybe he sets this down, maybe he rotates down his torso to set, oops, I gotta grab I'm actually gonna change the position. I don't like it where it is. I'm gonna put it at the chest instead. So the child and then the chest, con, hit P. So when he rotates, maybe he's rotating to set it down on the ground. And you can set it down there. And you have another one that's turned off. And when he sets it down, you turn that one off and you turn the other one on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm starting to get it.
Okay, so
like
I would
you
actually
would
just
bend down, put it down, but could you separate it from the rest of the body so that it could like almost break off and be able to fall to the floor?
Yeah. So I'm going to actually duplicate this and let's see, tear it off. Shift P to tear it off. So now I have two megaphones. And you want to make sure if you need two megaphones that you create two layers. One for, right now they're on the same, actually I don't even think they're on a layer. Yeah, they're not on a layer. So I'm going to set the one that I have selected to a new layer. And maybe I'll call this M phone G for ground, or just something that you can easily understand, LYR. And then I'll turn this one off for a second. Oh, you know what? The other one turned off with his rig. I forgot about that. So yeah. So we already have him on two different layers. So if you set this, he rotates down to set this one down, and then a couple frames later, he sets it on the ground, then you can, and you might actually, even though this is on this layer, you might want to separate this off. So I would just select this layer and say remove selected object. Let's see, why doesn't it do it? Remove selected object. I'm just going to delete that layer. And let me put his body back in position for a second. Oops, I forgot I missed a couple of joints. There we go. Okay, so I would probably put this on its own layer like we did the other one. And I'll call this one M phone H for maybe hand, or HND for hand when it's in his hand _ LYR. So you know which one you're going to turn off and on. When you turn one off, you turn the other one on. And if I put his rig back on a layer, let's see if it'll let me do this. If I select a new layer, yeah. Oh, the ground is off. Turn the hand on. Okay, there we go. No. Anyway, just come up with a system that will work where you can animate the So the layers are really important for you to be able to keep your stuff organized. Not only your props, but also your characters. Because they all need to start here in the middle at 0, 0, 0 as their default position. In fact, if I start animating this, I would set it to 100, and I would set this as my default position. So I would make an all button. We haven't talked about all buttons, have we? We'll get to that when we get to animation. But anyway, so I would just select all of his rig controls. And the head, and then I would hit S so that everything is keyed at 100. That's my default frame. And I would also select the megaphone in his hand and key that at S. So that's where the character is. Oh, you know what I forgot? I didn't key the foot pads around him in case I want to animate those. So just make sure everything that you're going to animate is selected, and then I hit S to key those. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm just showing you that at 101, we would hit S again, have everything selected and hit S again. And we would actually start the animation at frame 101. So 100, we never show frame 100 to our audience. That's our safety frame. That's just for us. So at 101, let's say in the actual scene, he's actually not going to be here. He's going to be way back here and maybe, I don't know, over here, and maybe he'll be rotated. So, and then you're going to place you're going to put each character at their default position, import them into the scene here, and then build the, you have the rig, you're going to key the rig at 100 at the default safety frame. And then at 101 is where you actually pose the characters out for the movement. And again, we'll get back into that when we get into the animation of it, or even before that, when we get to layout, you're going to start to do that. Does that answer your question about layers and the megaphone and other things you can do to organize yourself?
Yeah, but one quick question is, if my character is like pulling something out of nowhere, would I just like hide it behind its back when I turn it on in the animation and then just pull it around?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
You want to make it as simple as possible. If this guy is going to pull something from behind his back, maybe you grab the controls and he rotates around to grab it. And then one frame he grabs it, and then the next frame he shows it. He reveals it to the audience. Yeah. Can you guys hold on for just a second? I need to check on something. In fact, I'm going to pause it recording. All right, so.
Oh, you're not screen sharing.
Oh, thank you. There we go. Okay, so to make a sword, and of course, the first thing you want to do is you want to start with the shape that most accurately represents your object. So if it's a sword, it might be a box or it could be a sphere. I'm going to say a box because swords are generally, they have more pointy, angles. So I'll say a cube. And again, I want to have enough geometry, and it's kind of hit and miss. If you don't have enough, if you just go in here and you say, I don't know, it's not going to be very thick. So maybe the depth will stay at like 6. And then the width and height, I don't know, maybe width will be 12. And then the height, I'm going to want a lot more. So maybe, I don't know, I'll say 30 or 20, something. Let's start with 20.
Hello?
Oops, I said 2, not 20. So I'm going to scale it in this view, and I'm going to flatten it in this view. And I'm still going to use a lot of the same tools. I'm going to put a point on this. I'm going to use edge. And I just wanted to select the top edges. I'm going to hit 4 to rotate around to make sure that I don't have anything else selected, just orange here. And then I'm going to hit 6 again. I'm going to drag this up maybe a little bit and maybe release some of these, drag some more up. This is a really broad sword, I guess. Oops, that's not what I wanted. There you go. And then maybe I'll just, instead of using edges, the last one I'll use vertex, so I can just pull this up. So that's a pretty sharp sword already. But I want the other pieces too to follow. So hit 4. Maybe I'll grab these guys and use soft select again, but not so much. I'll put it at a pretty low value. And I'm not gonna, you guys already, I think we kind of went through how to shape the sword. The most important thing I want to get to is extruding and using target weld. So I don't know, let's just say that I made the rest of the sword beautiful up here. I'm just grabbing some of these to pull these up. And you would do the same thing with the rest of them. Maybe if things get a little strange looking, maybe some of this stuff needs to come up a little bit higher. You can see I got off symmetry a little bit because I wasn't paying attention. But the important thing is target welds and extrusions. So that's a pretty big sword. I'm going to go to the front view, and it's probably not going to need to be in the ground. So I'm going to change the center pivot, hold down D and X, snap it to the bottom. Or actually, that's probably close, but it's probably not accurate. Yeah. I'm going to hold down D and V for Victor or vertex and snap it to the sword itself. Then hold down X and drag it so it snaps to the grid. All right. Maybe I'll just take some of these and scale them in just to make it look a little bit more sword-like. 3, that's pretty good. Something more like that. And so to make the handle, I'm going to want some sharp edges. So I'm not going to use soft select. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to move these up. Maybe this guy, I'll move this guy up too. And of course, if I had a reference, it would be a lot cleaner looking, but I'm going to go to the side view or the perspective view, and I'm going to select the faces that I want to extrude. So there is a danger in using the extrusion tool. Very often what happens is you have faces on top of faces, when we call those double faces. So one thing that might help avoid that is the way you select. If I hold down Shift and select these faces one at a time, you have a fairly good chance of selecting what you want, but very often what happens is you're accidentally selecting faces you don't intend to. So you could do it that way, or what I prefer is right click and hold and go down to paint and then paint select. I don't need that, sorry. I just need the paint select tool. And this brush is too big. Well, it could be, actually, it might be the right size, but I'm going to scale it down just a little bit so I don't accidentally select anything from the front or back view. I'm going to hold down B as in boy, left mouse drag, and I'm just selecting those faces. And you can see I accidentally selected some here. So I'm going to zoom in closer. And in fact, I'm going to undo that because I don't want to have to reselect this side. So I'm going to mirror, I'm going to say symmetry, object X, and I'm going to hit 4 so I can see through it. And I can't see very well because there's so many lines, but I'm just going to paint on this side. And you can see when it started to round the corner. So I'm gonna hit 6, and then I'm gonna make this, I'm gonna zoom in here and hold down B to make it smaller. And then I'm gonna hold down Control, and I'm gonna deselect the faces that oh, you have to be, I guess, more in the center of the face to be able to deselect it. Oops, and then hold down Shift and just select that one face. So I'm just rotating around. I need to do the same thing on this side. But the important thing is Paint Select lets you select just what's on the surface, not what's through on the other side. All right, so now I have my faces. I'm actually going to scale this down because I know swords, their handle, what protects the hand from other swords is this area here. So I'm actually going to scale this section down a little bit. So I'm going to scale these down, and I'm just going to extrude those same faces that I had selected before. Now I'm going to go to Mesh Tool, Extrude. You can get to it there, or you can also use the modeling tools, polygon modeling, and you can go to this one right here. It's Extrude. So I'm just going to go here, Extrude. And when you click on it, initially you should get a blue little button. I don't see that. And maybe because I have symmetry turned on, it's not showing. But it gives me a scale, and it also gives me a translate Z. So I'm going to pull in that direction. And you can see that it's extruding out kind of like a, what do they call those, pasta makers that extrudes out the pasta. And depending if I just want this perfectly straight, I can just keep pulling it out. But if I want to start to curve it, I probably need to add a few edges. So maybe I can just hit extrude again. I'm already in the command. I can hit Y, which is repeat the last command, and then, oops, I didn't do it. So I would just use that extrusion button again, and then drag it out. Maybe this one's going to come up a little bit. Oops. There we go. Maybe I'll even rotate it out a little bit. So as long as I'm mirroring it, with the object X, and I've set up my object in the front and side views correctly, you should get symmetry working pretty nicely. I don't know. I'll do one more. I'm trying to get to a point where I can show you target weld. And maybe I'll taper this a little bit so it starts to skinny up or something. Maybe pull it up. And probably these hands need to be, let's see. Oops, I didn't select these guys. This stuff, I'm going to scale that a little bit too, so it starts to, actually, I'm going to extrude it again because I want there to be a separation between the sword and the handle part. So I'm going to extrude again. And I'm going to pull it out in the Z. There we go. There's a little bit more separation. So that's basically using the extrude button. So maybe, for aesthetics purposes, maybe I'll scale these guys. And maybe I'll turn them into points or something, so it feels more menacing. So I'm just designing the sword as I'm going. But the important thing, and this is important to all models, regardless of if you're animating or you're modeling a sword or a character, you can see that every time I'm creating stuff, any new geometry, it's all boxes, little squares, four-sided pieces of geometry. There's no n-gons. And that's really important because the software, Maya, does not handle n-gon shapes or more than four sides. It renders them. It doesn't render them very well at all. It has a lot of problems. Okay, so let's just say, I know. I'm going to turn the bottom into more of a circular shape. So here's our box. I'm going to scale it a little bit. Oops, I need to turn off my object X and make it more like a square. And I don't have, I have more in the front view than I do in the side view, so it's not going to be perfectly accurate. But I'm just going to pull this up a little bit. Let's see. Trying to think of a good sword shape. It would justify. What I was going to do, let's just say I'm going to make another box. For some reason, I need to create a little button down here that's, I mean, I could just add more geometry like we've been doing with edge loops, but for the sake of showing you guys how to use the target weld, I'm going to go to faces, and I'm just wanting to select the bottom faces right here. So I'm going to delete those. And again, if I'm going to delete edges or vertices, I have to go to edit mesh, delete edge vertex. But if I'm deleting faces, I can actually just hit delete on my keyboard. And now I have an open hole. 6. All right, so maybe I'll scale in this axis too, just so it kind of pinches a little bit. Let's do this. I'm just going to take this sword and duplicate it because I'm being lazy, and rotate it upside down 180 degrees. Oops, that's 80, not 180. And let's say I don't need the rest of this. I'm just going to delete it. But I know what I have at the bottom has the same number of faces as what I was doing earlier, because it's just a perfect mirror image of it. In fact, you can see that I got off some on the reflection. So I'm going to select this guy and go to the front view. And these guys right now, they're two different objects. In fact, I need to check and make sure they're right on the center. Okay. So I'm going to, before I can make these, I'm going to target weld this to this edge loop to that edge loop so that they are one object now. But before I can do that, I need to combine them. So I go to mesh, combine, and now they both turn green. So that's going to make things a little bit easier for me. I'm also going to grab this guy and pull him over because I got off track. And I'm just eyeballing this just because I'm trying to do this quickly. And I'm eyeballing this one. I'm going to grab all these guys and drag them up a little bit. Maybe this is the same thing. So now I'm ready to target weld. I'm going to hit 4. And I essentially want this edge loop to follow this edge loop. I'm sorry, this edge to follow this edge. So there's the exact same number of vertices and edges all the way around because I just duplicated it. So I was sure that there were.
I'm confused. Why are you duplicating?
Because I wanted to, let's just say you wanted to stick a ball down here or some other object onto
Oh.
this. So I need to, now that I have a duplicate, I can't have this space in between them. I have to close up that space. So to close that up, one of the tools is a target weld. They used to call it merge vertices before, but they've changed the name. So target weld is under mesh tools, target weld. And I'm going to show you the options. There's really only 2 options. You can either use the first one, well, you can either have a target where one is the target like this. The second one that you select is the target. Or if you want them both to merge towards the center, you just select the center and pull up. And with you don't have to do this to every single one of them. You can do it like this, but what's faster is just selecting every other one, because if you're selecting an edge, you're selecting 2 vertices, and that's automatically closing up both vertices. So you just go all the way around essentially. And I don't need this anymore. I'll close that and just There's another tool called Bridge Tool that actually does it in one fell swoop, but it's a little bit more involved. So this is a simple way to do it as well. And if you accidentally, select it to the wrong one, you can see that that messed it up. You want to be careful as you select, because you don't want to accidentally select the wrong component to snap it to. So I'll just keep doing these. That one and that one, that one, that one. Okay, so now it looks to me like we have one solid object and there's no seam. I mean, we have a seam, but there's no, the geometry looks good, but you're not sure. I'm not sure, and we need to check that. So to check it, what I like to do is go to Mesh Tools. Actually, before I do anything else, I need to look over here and I can see that my history is getting pretty long. The longer that gets, the more it's going to bog down my session of Maya. So I'm going to go Edit, Delete by Type, History. Now it's clean. So, but what I was saying is I want to check this target weld and make sure that my welds actually hold. So I'm going to go to Mesh Tools. I'm sorry, not Mesh Tools, Surfaces, Sculpt Geometry Tool. And this seems really counterintuitive, but hopefully it'll make sense in a second. So I have this great big old paintbrush. I need to hold down B and shrink it. There we go. Now I'm gonna, either use a relax tool or the smooth tool. Either one should work. And I'm just gonna paint that area. And what I'm checking for is that the geometry doesn't separate. So that side looks good. So I'm gonna go ahead and undo that. I'm gonna go around the other side and check that side too, just to make sure that I don't have any holes where the geometry separates or splits. And this is just a temporary check, but it's important because I had a character that, my thesis character, my main character is this big Bigfoot monster. And I spent a lot of time getting the model right. But there was a couple of places in the inseams of like really tight spots where I had some holes. And some of the features that I wanted to use, like with hair, I couldn't use them because of those holes. So it's really important that you seal this up so that it's nice and clean. So does anyone have any questions about using extrusion or target welds? All right, I'm gonna do a little bit more to the sword just to make it feel a little bit more menacing. All right, so I selected the whole thing around. I'm going to hit 4 so I can see through it. And I'm going to turn my soft select back on. That's too much. I'm going to set it down to maybe half of that. That's good. And then I'm going to scale what I have selected. Well, I really don't need the top because I already have a point there. So I'll deselect that stuff and then scale this stuff out. And I could keep doing that and flattening it, and that looks more like a baseball bat. But you can work on the blade. But the important thing, just getting these shapes to do what you want them to do, or getting these shapes so that they're doing what you want. Yeah, what you want them to do. Anyways, any questions on target welds or combining? So you have to combine your objects before you can target weld if you have two separate objects. And of course, you can continue to edge loops if you want. Symmetry, I'll turn it back on so I can insert edge loop right there, right there. And then I can just move those around to get more of a curved shape if I wanted. Yeah. Okay. All right, so there's your sword. I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video.